art in general, whether it's edible or not, it's a work of your heart, and no one can recreate exactly what you do. And it takes hours and days and months and years to perfect your skills. And there's always going to be people out there that are better than you, and we should be thankful for that. That gives us something to strive for. But that shouldn't devalue what you do as a creative.
Welcome to Imagined Here, where you will hear stories of local creative talent. Let's get started with your host, Andy Crowner.
Today we sit down with Michelle Payne from Michelle's Creative Cookies in Davenport, Iowa. Michelle also has a Etsy store where she sells custom invitation designs, and she has also recently opened her own CPA firm in the Quad Cities. Michelle has some great tips on how to get started and also goes in depth on really valuing your time and your craft and charging what you are worth. We will have links on imaginedhere.com to everything we talk about in today's show. Just head over to imaginedhere.com and type Michelle or cookies in the search bar, and her show notes page will pop up. Here is our interview with Michelle Payne. Let's welcome to Imagined Here, Michelle Payne from Michelle's Creative Cookies in Davenport, Iowa. Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you create, and give us a little glimpse into your personal life.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Michelle Payne. I am the owner of Michelle's Creative Cookies. I am married to Mike. We've been married, just over 11 years. We have 3 kids, ages 9, 7, and 4. So we're super busy with kid activities and sports and all that. And obviously my business is cookies, and I do exclusively sugar cookies, decorated sugar cookies.
So Michelle, take us to the day you actually started selling cookies and actually making them for other people. Tell us a story of that day and how you made that decision.
Gosh, yeah. So I can remember it very vividly. I had done some cookies for it was actually a baby shower for an employee at work, and everyone at work was like, "Who did you get these cookies from?" And I was like, "Oh, I just made them, like no big deal, And they were just like, "What do you mean you made them?" Like they just were, they didn't understand, they didn't believe it. And so they had told me, "You need to sell these." And I was just like, "Oh, I don't need to sell them. Like, it's fine. There's nothing special about them." But the rest of the day, that just kind of weighed on my mind. And I'm like, I've been doing cookies for my kids for years and years and years. I had tons of pictures. So I went home that night and came up with a name and posted them all on Facebook. And that was day one of launching my business.
After you posted that on Facebook, what was kind of the first batch of cookies you sold?
Well, obviously, how Facebook asks you like to invite people to your page. So it started with all my friends and family. And so I just started getting very small, very simple orders. I remember one of the first ones I did was like an animal print design, which actually wasn't all that simple, but just kind of anything and everything. I was just like, sure, I can do it, but mostly starting with family and friends. And I think my first order was like a dozen for a week. So started very small.
One issue we all have when we're getting started and whatever we create is kind of that fear of first stepping out and creating something for the first time or selling something or showing our first creation. So what held you back from starting in the beginning, and how did you conquer those fears?
For sure. It was thinking, I am not a trained baker by any means. Like I like to bake. I like to bake for my kids, but I didn't go in, to any schools. I didn't get any certification for baking. So right off the bat, I thought, my recipe is just basic. Like there's nothing special about it. Nobody's gonna pay money for these cookies that I make. So that was definitely the first thing that held me back. And then seeing all these bakers out there that do these elaborate designs, I'm like, I am nowhere near them in my skill level. So definitely that, I'm not good enough. Who's going to want to buy my cookies? That was the first thing that kind of held me back. But on the other side, I was like, what's the worst that could happen? Nobody orders them. Well, then I guess I have a free weekend. It was kind of no risk, but definitely in the back of my mind knowing that, you know, I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as some of these other bakers out there.
So you are obviously busy with family life and cookies, but you also own a CPA firm, and I also found that you own an Etsy shop, Honeybean Designs, which
Yeah,
does printable invitation designs. Is that correct?
correct.
So how did you get
Yes.
into the invitation design as well?
Well, I'll start with, so I went to school, got my accounting degree. I was a double major my first 2 years in accounting and art. I think there were two people in the entire university that had those two majors, complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And as I got further into my studies, I decided to drop my art degree or my art major. So I graduated with an accounting degree, went the typical direction, worked at a CPA firm right out of college, got my CPA certification within, about a year and a half, and worked accounting jobs. And I enjoyed the accounting aspect, but there was always something missing. Like, I'm just a creative at heart. And so that's where I started with invitations. I loved making them for my kids' birthdays. So I decided to open an Etsy shop and put them out there for others. And that was in 2012. So that was my first kind of creative outlet. I have over 2,000 orders on Etsy to date. So it took off and did really well. And it was just kind of this fun thing I could do on the side. And then my focus kind of changed more to the cookies. Once those started picking up, my design work has it's steady. It kind of, sits at a certain level, but I've put a lot more of my time and attention into building the cookie business as my latest creative outlet.
You know,
So,
you are interview number 4, and something I've found with every interview so far is a creative person is creative, and how they choose to show that maybe isn't always the same, and everybody seems to have multiple passions and things they get involved in. So that doesn't surprise me at all that, there's a few ventures out there that you're creating things through and have multiple creative outlets.
yes, yes, that's what I mean. My husband, he always asks, can't you just have a hobby? Do you always have to monetize it? And I'm like, I don't know if it's just, I mean, I've always known I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Like, I want to build my own businesses. That's something that I just have that strong pull towards. So for me, I don't know, there's fulfillment in that, starting your own business and, putting your own products out there. And, that creative outlet is huge. I don't know if I could just go to work every day and do accounting work. Like, I have to have that other thing on the side to, balance me out, I guess.
You and I have that a lot in common. Even when I was a little kid, not only was I learning to program and do web pages and stuff, but I remember buying the domain, and this was back when you could very first buy domains. I bought WeSellShirts.com and thought I was going to be the shirt king, So I've always been
Yeah.
looking for, not only how can I create things, but then, oh man, I bet I could sell this or do this for other people too.
Right, right. And I don't know, it doesn't make sense to everybody, but for me, I'm just like, and I think it's like a motivation for me too. It holds me accountable when it's not just, oh, I'm going to make, cookies for fun to drop off to someone. It's motivating and challenging to have those orders and to be held accountable by your customers and fans.
So you've recently also opened your own CPA firm.
I have. Yes. Like I said, I've been a CPA for over 10 years now, and tying everything back to like the passion in my heart is that I want to, have close relationships with others and serve them in a way that's meaningful, which, ties very strongly to my latest endeavor in my CPA business. We have a passion. I opened it with a partner, so we have a passion for serving our clients in a way that, maybe traditional accounting firms don't do. Like, we want to be involved with you, all year long. We want to support you, be available. We want to be forward thinking, not just, okay, your year's done. How did it go? But actually thinking strategically ahead. How can we get you to have your best year?
I love it. So, Michelle, what is some of the best advice you've ever been given?
I would say, and this has taken me a while to come to terms with it, but there's no such thing as failure. You either learn or you succeed. I'm definitely a perfectionist, so I'm like, if I don't succeed, then it's a failure. But changing your mindset to, those times where you don't succeed, you're always learning something, and it's making you better at either what you're doing or what your goals are. You're always learning something.
That's true. And, as a longtime computer programmer, the failure or what can sometimes be perceived as a failure is, to me, just gathering data so I can make a decision down the road.
Yes, for sure.
So tell us a story of one of those times you failed and got some more perspective on something. Really take us to a day of, what, here is one major fail I had, because we've all had them, and tell us what you learned.
I came up with my own icing recipe. And so this was pretty early on. I had an order for a St. Ambrose bee logo cookie. So anyone that's not familiar with that, it's a very detailed, like, intricate designed bee with, it's got the head, it's got the body, it's got the legs. It's not just like this simplified bee shape. So I was like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? I can figure it out. So doing that, I was in way over my head. I did not have my icing consistency figured out at that point. And it ended up being kind of a mess. Like, the bee was too large and too detailed to put on one cookie. So I had to kind of put the head on one cookie and the body on another cookie. And you had to kind of hold them next to each other to get the full bee shape. So that was kind of a big cookie failure for me. Luckily, it was a family friend, and she was, not presenting these to anyone. It was just kind of for fun. But that challenged me to perfect my icing recipe and, just practice and practice and practice, which is, really the only way you're going to learn. In a lot of ways, you're not just naturally good at something. It takes that time and attention and practice and failure to get better.
Now, you, in terms of baking, you are self-taught, correct?
I am, yes.
I think we all have those failure moments that we learn from, and especially as we are self-taught and maybe didn't have some of those failure moments in school, we learn those along the way in our careers and in our hobbies. And so switch gears now with us and tell us a story of kind of, you got over the fear of making cookies and selling them to other people. What was kind of the big I made it moment in the cookie business so far?
Oh gosh, I still say I'm not quite sure I've made it, but looking back on where I started, it's obviously a completely different business than when I started. When I started, it was, family and friends, it was small orders, and now it's gotten to the point where, my customers, I don't necessarily know, and I've done work for businesses and, big events. So I would say, when I kind of knew that I made it, obviously with people reaching out to me that I didn't know, that was a good indicator. But also when I was able to charge what I was worth and people were fine paying it. Starting out, of course, you're like, oh my gosh, what are people going to pay for this? It's, you're doubting your abilities. But when I sat down and got firm with pricing and people were willing to pay it, that's kind of, a green light, like, okay, this is a real business and people like what I do, and it's made it, I guess.
I've had a lot of that in my life, and especially creating web pages when I was younger, when I was just a kid. And, if you would go out at that point in time in the late 90s, early 2000s and ask a company for a website, it was $5,000 to $10,000. And, and I was charging a couple $100 at the time. And I remember kind of doubling and tripling my prices and doing work that was better than most of those companies. And I just remember finally going, okay, this is worth it, and people see the value in what I do. So that really resonates with me too.
Yeah. And I feel like it's, you spend all this time perfecting your skills, and I mean, that's worth something. Like maybe your time in it isn't all that much. Like I think that's where people get kind of tied up. Like I can do this so quickly now, but all that time it took to get you to that point, that's all worth something. And you need to be compensated for that time and talent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Being able to do it right the first time is worth a lot.
Yes.
So, Michelle, what projects are you working on right now?
Oh gosh, I've got a lot going on right now. So I would say the most kind of interesting thing is myself and another local cookie baker are in the process of trying to put together a group to support local bakers in our area, in the Quad Cities, and surrounding areas, just like a support group, kind of along the same lines of what we were just talking about. Like let's make sure we're charging what we're worth and not, just doing it part-time on the side and thinking that you can sell your product for a cheap price. So we're kind of in the beginning stages of getting together this group, supporting each other, learning from each other, sharing ideas. People often think of, all these other bakers as competitors, and we want to look at each other as a community and refer each other when another one's workload is too full. We can support each other. There's room for all of us, and we can learn and grow and create a stronger community together. So that, I would say that's one of the biggest projects right now that's kind of near and dear to my heart.
So what do the next couple of years look like for you in the cookie business? Are there some major goals that you have or shifts in the business?
Gosh, I think about it a lot. I don't know. I don't really see a storefront in my future. I kind of like the small home-based bakery, but I would love to get my products out into some other like coffee shops, restaurants, to more where it's, a dessert that they offer all the time that we can supply to them and work closely with some, like I said, the coffee shops, restaurants, and that's kind of like a big project on the road that I would just like to expand on. I think that would be a nice way to get out there in the community and, another stream of revenue beyond the custom orders as well.
Now, I saw on Instagram actually today that you were maybe even thinking about doing some cookie classes.
Yeah. I've had a lot of people ask about that, and just the logistics of it all, figuring out where to have them and what size is the right size, of people attending those decorating classes. I know it's something people are interested in, and it's a fun activity, go with girlfriends or, mother-daughter. So definitely something I'm kind of kicking around.
So in your cookie business, who has kind of influenced your work, and where do you find ideas for different types of cookies?
I follow lots of people on Instagram, on Facebook, lots of different cookie groups, and some local friends as well. We do share a lot of ideas. I just like to, try new things too. One thing that's kind of funny, I like to take the shape, like the cookie shape, and like turn it around and flip it upside down and see if I can make something totally different out of it. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll look on Pinterest for an hour or two, just look for, different themed cookies, and out of it come up with something totally different. And that's where my business name being Michelle's Creative Cookies, I came up with it, in 2 seconds one day, but it's kind of spoken to what I do. I mean, I only make cookies. A lot of people ask if I do cakes. I just do sugar cookies, and I like to be creative with it. I want to do something different, not stuff you see all the time, just something totally out of the box.
Now, I saw in a previous interview that kind of this cookie outlet, this creative outlet for you, was actually sparked by your mother.
Yeah, yeah. My mom, she has sold Pampered Chef for, gosh, probably 25 years now. So, I mean, growing up, that she was always baking, cooking. We always had really good tools, which is helpful. I mean, that's all I use is Pampered Chef products. So, yeah, I mean, she definitely sparked that interest in me to bake, to try different recipes and be in the kitchen for sure.
So we've noticed that a lot of podcast listeners also really like to read. So do you have any book recommendations for us? Something you've read recently or just really love?
Yeah, I do. I love listening to books like on almost always audiobooks while I'm decorating cookies or working out. That's kind of my go-to is the audiobooks. But most recently I listened to The Third Door by Alex Banyan. And that was just an awesome book for entrepreneurs, business owners. And the gist of it was basically, there's your traditional way. You go to school, you get degrees, and then, that's your entrance into a career. And then this third door option being, or the second door is having, someone in your life that's, maybe you were born into a family of wealth or you were born into a family-owned business. So you get there that way. And this third door is just taking a totally different approach, like, going through a back door and, running and beating everyone to this back door. Just totally unconventional and just a different way of thinking. Maybe you don't follow this linear path, or maybe you're not born into this job or career, but taking this third route that he ties back to that being the route that all these famous people have taken, Bill Gates and, all these famous people that we know today.
Imagine to your listeners, we know that you like audiobooks, so we've teamed up with Audible to bring you a special offer. Visit imaginedhere.com/audible for a free 30-day Audible trial and 2 free audiobooks. You can cancel at any time, and you get to keep your audiobooks forever. Michelle, what's one of the best physical gifts you've received or given under $100?
When my husband and I got married in 2008, we got a gift card for a Netflix subscription, which was, it wasn't dishes. It wasn't, a blanket or typical wedding gift. It was this Netflix subscription. And we thought it was kind of cool and literally have had the same account ever since our wedding. So that was something just totally different. I just loved that idea of, not your traditional wedding gift, but obviously very useful.
That's a great friend that bought you that.
Right.
I went to a wedding of two of my friends got married last week, and they are both video gamers. And so I went and bought them some Xbox gift cards for their wedding. So
nice. Yeah. And I mean, that's so useful. It's funny now because like all our kids do is watch Netflix. They don't understand what commercials are or just regular TV. But yeah, that was the gift that we still use every day.
One thing I love about having a more local centered podcast is we can actually talk about things here in our area that people can go to. So do you set up and show or sell your cookies anywhere? And what's some of your favorite events or venues to go to?
Yes, I do. I am at one location locally. I do have my cookies at Cafe 392, the coffee shop in downtown Davenport. I do decorated cookies there, so they sell them out of their case. And that's my only location that I physically sell out of. And that's also my absolute favorite place to go. I mean, I love to go there for coffee. Their coffee's amazing. Their food's amazing. But above all that, like the people in the environment is just fabulous. Like they're so friendly, and there's just so many smiling faces, and it's the perfect place to go if you just have an afternoon or, you just want to get some work done, you want to see friendly faces. That it's such a great place to go.
We will add a little link to their webpage over on your show notes page, which anybody can see if they go to imaginedhere.com and type Michelle or cookies in the search bar, and your show notes page will come up with all the information that we talked about today. So, Michelle, if you would tell us just a little bit about the gear you use and some of the best tools of the trade that you would recommend to people that may be interested in getting started doing some of this for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously going to have to start with a recipe, and if anyone wants to reach out to me, I've got some good recipes to use. But beyond that, the tools you use are going to be really important. Like I mentioned earlier, Pampered Chef, that's kind of my go-to tools. That's what I grew up with. That's what, I'm comfortable using. But obviously the basic stuff like a baking sheet and a rolling pin and those things. I decorate with bags. So decorating bags are the way to go there. You can get those on Amazon. I mean, a lot of different places. But that really, I mean, obviously a mixer too. I do have a mixer that I mix all the dough in, but it's pretty basic tools, things that most people already have in their kitchen, really nothing extra fancy.
Do you have one tool that just, when you pick this up, it saved you a lot of time or it's so much easier to use compared to what you used to?
I mean, I guess I would say the mixer. That's obviously the biggest time savings. I have a big one that's a professional grade, so I can do bigger batches of cookies. That is a lifesaver. I can't imagine not having that.
If you started over today, how would you begin if you had all the knowledge you have now? Go a little in depth. So if people are interested in maybe starting their own home cooking business and sharing what they create, give us some tips on how you would start if you knew everything that you knew today.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to get started again today, knowing kind of what I have been through over the last couple of years, I would say it is so important to get involved in a local community right up front. There's so many talented people in our area, so many people that have been through this process already of building a business. And it could be a similar line of work, it could be a totally different line of work, but having those people to go to when you hit a rough patch or you're questioning, something you need to do to get your business licensed, that community is huge. I unfortunately tried to do it all on my own, and it's hard. You don't have all the answers yourself. You do a lot of research and you might not get to the right conclusion, but having a network of people would, I've learned over the years to get to that point. But if I had started out with the network of people, I would have been much further ahead and not made some of the mistakes I made as far as getting my business set up and getting comfortable with where to market and how to advertise, and could have saved me a lot of headaches for sure. I also, about a year into my business, I invested in a course that helped me with the pricing and marketing and finding target customers, which was huge. Again, if I had done that right off the bat, I wouldn't have maybe been so frustrated and felt like I mean, in the beginning, I felt like I was just working with friends and family, and I was more hesitant to increase my prices and charge what I was worth. But that's because I was, pricing based on my feelings instead of the product, which I just learned from this course that I took and getting to know people in the community.
What was the course that you took?
It was called Passion to Profit. It's actually put on by a bakery owner in California, and just a really awesome program about, building up your confidence and obviously charging what you're worth and running your businesses like a real business, not just this hobby on the side, but actually analyzing your, income and your expenses and running a profitable business. So
some of the people actually listening to this podcast will be your neighbors right there in the Quad Cities. Do you have any resources for them locally if they're interested in starting a business, somebody they should actually reach out to?
Oh gosh. I mean, if we're talking bakery business, I think like the Scott County Health Department or the local health department is a great place to start. I remember being kind of worried, like, I don't want to reach out to them and ask questions and, have myself get in trouble or something. But that's not what they're there for. They're a resource to, help you along the process. They can tell you what you need if you're baking out of your home, what type of, licensing you need to have for that, what type of products you can make out of your home without licensing. They're a great resource. They're not ones to be feared, but get to know them right away because they can help you a lot.
Well, thanks very much for being with us today, Michelle. And if you would, just take a couple minutes and leave us with some parting guidance and tell us how fans can connect with you.
I guess just to reiterate what I said earlier, art in general, whether it's edible or not, it's a work of your heart, and no one can recreate exactly what you do. And it takes hours and days and months and years to perfect your skills. And there's always going to be people out there that are better than you, and we should be thankful for that. That gives us something to strive for. But that shouldn't devalue what you do as a creative. The point you're at, it should be celebrated. You should be compensated for the time that you've invested in yourself to learn and grow. Don't sell yourself short. Don't let emotion come into play. You're always worth it. And you can find me on Instagram at Michelle's Creative Cookies, also on Facebook at Michelle's Creative Cookies. And then our website is michellescreativecookies.com. So pretty simple, pretty consistent. You can find me all those places.
And we will have links to all of those places over on imaginedhere.com, and just type Michelle or cookies in the search bar. And the show notes page will pop up, and it'll have links to everything we talked about today. And, of course, links to go over and see and purchase Michelle's Creative Cookies. So thanks again, Michelle, for being with us.
Awesome. Thanks so much.